Well, it's new toy day for me, so let's get this out. I've got a review for you today of the Elgato Prompter. This is something I've been looking at for a while because it's not just a teleprompter. It does so many other things as well. It's great for podcasting, video pods, for live events because of the live view that it can give you and let you look at the camera while you're actually recording. But also the teleprompting too, and a bunch of other aspects because it's got its own inbuilt screen. So let's have a look at it. Let's see what the Elgato Prompter can do for us as creators. Shall we look inside? Setup rings. Now, one of the things with this is that it claims to be able to work with just about any kind of camera that you can possibly think of. That includes webcams, it includes DSLRs, and it does have a whole bunch of setup rings for that very purpose. So these are all designed to be able to attach any kind of camera, webcam, DSLR, whatever, to the prompter. Then we've got the shroud, which is obviously the mask that goes over the back, keeps it all dark so that you can actually see the screen. USB cable, standard stuff. So this does include, like I said, its own screen, which is quite cool. Normally when you buy a teleprompter, you need an iPad or to put your phone in it or something like that. But with this teleprompter, you have the area at the top. So there's a screen here. You can't see it because it's so reflective. It's just, well, it's not reflective, sorry, it's just glass. But there is actually, you can probably just about see that in the reflection there. There you go. So that is actually the part that reflects the screen from down below, but this is actually a real inbuilt monitor, which is quite cool. Because that means, and this is the important thing for the teleprompter, one of the things I think is going to be great for podcasting, for live events, all that kind of stuff, is because you can actually use this as your monitor. So it means when you're doing an interview, podcast interview, video interview, whatever it is, you can actually use this as your screen with Zoom, with Riverside, with Alitu, with whatever, so that you can actually look people straight in the eyes. And it can actually add an extra element of connection, of, you know, just that human element to that conversation, make that conversation just a little bit better. So that's one of the things that I want to try out. So that's what you get in the box. Let's get it set up. Got it on a mount just behind the monitor, which attaches to the desk. I'll put a link in the show notes or the description below for the mount I'm using, but it's pretty standard. I use it for the same one for my lights as well here. So now I need to connect up the teleprompter so that the screen on the teleprompter actually shows up in my computer as an extra monitor. How many cameras can you point at each other? So that's what my webcam is seeing right now. We've got the Elgato up the top here. You can see the screen down there. And isn't that cool? It is a second screen. So if I grab my mouse, you can see the pointer moving around. That's now a second monitor. I can actually look straight at the people I'm talking to, which is very cool. I've been using the prompter for a couple of weeks now, played around with a whole bunch of things related to it. So I've got a bit of info on the software, worth noting some of the special features, but also some use cases I've found, really get into, you know, how you can use this, why it's worth it, for me certainly, and could be for you. First, the software. So you download the Elgato Camera Hub and it manages all of the writing of scripts. It manages the teleprompting, you know, the script actually scrolling across the screen on the prompter itself, like speed, all that kind of stuff. But there's a few things that stand out with it. One is the interesting thing that you can overlay the script on the normal screen. So I've mentioned earlier in the video that you can use the teleprompter as a second screen on your computer. So what you can do is you can actually run the software to actually have the script up there on screen, but then set the opacity in the camera software so that you can see through the script to the screen behind it. So for example, I can have a Zoom call or a live event running on, StreamYard or something similar. I can see that live event on the second screen of the prompter itself, but then my script is actually transparently running over the top of it. So you can be looking at the camera, but you can also see just, what your live view looks like. You can see your own screen, you can see the other people on there, you can even see the chat stream if you want to, but your script is still there overlaid on the screen. So you can see all of that without having to look away. And I found that sounds a bit confusing, but it actually works really nicely. And a final little thing as well, they do have a little guide mark, which I find really useful. You can turn it on in the Elgato software, puts a little cross or a square right in the middle of the screen where the camera is, so that you know where to look, even when you're kind of reading through your script. So what about use cases? What can you use this for? And interestingly, I'm obviously using the Elgato Prompter. I'm staring through the prompter. I've got a little script of prompts right here to show me all these use cases. So hopefully I won't look away from the screen. But of course, the few things that I've used it for. One, normal calls. So actually just getting on a call with my team, with other people I'm meeting, your standard Zoom calls, Google Meet calls, whatever that is, you can look them in the eye while you're having that call, and it just makes it more engaging, I think. It makes it so you're not looking around as much, you look less distracted, you're more engaged in the call. Number two, a slightly more unusual one, I have used my calendar up here on this second screen. So I have my screen down here, I have my Elgato Prompter above it, and I often have my calendar just always in that little screen above my monitor. So it's sitting there showing me when I've got a call coming up. I can just go straight to that screen, click the little call thing, and it pops up. I've often been guilty in the past of missing calls. I've tried to figure out all sorts of different ways to try and remind myself calls are coming up. And this is actually a really nice one because I've got in a habit of having the calendar up there, the reminders pop up on that screen. Otherwise, if they're in the background in my main screen or I just close it down without thinking, it doesn't remind you. But when I have my calendar up there, I click the little meeting link in there, go straight into Google Meet, opens up on the same little screen. Actually, it's just really useful. Number three, relating to that, looking them in the eye, just podcast recordings or YouTube recordings with somebody else, but able to just look them in the eye and use that transparency feature so that you can have your prompts there, your script, but you're still seeing their face in front of you so that you can really engage with them. And also, there's a little extra there where you can have your own view up there. You can always tell you're in frame, whatever it is, to be able to tell, you can have it almost as a viewfinder for yourself to make sure you're looking okay, you're in the right place, lighting's all good, all that kind of stuff. Really useful actually for both of those. Number four is live events. Going beyond that, I always found when I was doing a live event, I was presenting at, an online live event, I would have to have 3 or 4 screens open. And it was always really hard to have on just one monitor. You'd have, your slides to be able to advance that. You'd have your script, but you'd also want to be able to see the live view to make sure that everything's going well, hasn't cut off, your signal's okay, and maybe the chat as well. So you'd have all these things here. But I've found with live events, I've presented a couple in the last couple of weeks using the prompter, and I'll have the live event view up on the prompter so that I'm looking at that as much as I can. I'll be able to see my script, my slides up there so that I can actually see what slide I'm on, all that kind of stuff. And I can have my script really close to the top of the monitor here so that I can see it very closely. I could even use that transparency overlay to have my script overlaid on top of the live event view, and that might work as well. I haven't tried that yet, but I can imagine that working nicely. Number 5, a quite specific one, but using it as a viewfinder for your camera. I actually have another monitor right over here on the left-hand side, which I use just for my camera. I plug it into my camera so that I can see myself, make sure I'm in frame, like I say, lighting's all good, all that kind of stuff. Whereas you can actually use this for it. It's big enough for that. It's arguably on the small side for that. Maybe can't quite tell if you're in focus, out of focus every now and again, but actually I'm finding it fine for that. Now, our final one, number 6, a little bonus, and I don't necessarily recommend this, but
People do have, you know, the game on in the background while they're working, you know, maybe some sport or maybe even a film or something. I've heard of many people having a film on in the background, you know, as company to kind of give them some kind of, it's almost a comfort blanket while you're working away. And you can use this as a perfect second screen for that because it's nice and small, maybe less distracting. Still distracting. I don't do this, but some people do. So you can have that there just playing in the background, just as a little entertainment or a bit of company. And equally, I have heard of people using the prompter in a way where they'll be on a call, you know, 2-hour meeting, getting a bit boring. You'll put the game on there or put a movie on, but it looks like you're still in the meeting. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. Maybe it's just a piss take, but it's possible. Stick that on and you could be watching the game or watching a movie while you look like you're in the meeting and paying attention. So that's all the use cases I can think of for the Elgato so far, but it's such a flexible little bit of kit. I've no doubt I'm going to use it for a whole bunch of other stuff in future too.
So I hope that was useful to you. I hope it told you if the Elgato Prompter is going to be a good choice for you. Remember, we've got tons more equipment reviews, whether it's microphones, mixers, or anything else over at thepodcasthost.com. Just go to thepodcasthost.com/equipment and you'll see all of them there. Otherwise, do subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of it here. Just hit that subscribe button down below and I'll see you on a future video.